Welcome back, dear viewers. You're still watching Nile Cruise on Nile TV, and from a very special place here in Cairo, from El Amira Aisha Palace in Cairo, we bring you this very special episode of Nile Cruise. Dear viewers, each country is known by its architectural identity, so it is alarming when this identity is vanished, destroyed, reused inappropriately, or abandoned with no use. They must therefore be loved, maintained, and preserved to ensure that they are very well preserved. And now we are going to discuss the significance and criteria of preserving historic buildings, as well as the impact of climate change and the role of local communities to preserve them. And in this context, dear viewers, we have all the pleasure to be joined with our dear guest, Dr. Mohamed Halwagy. A very good day, sir.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you with us in today's episode of Nile Cruise.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sir, what measures are taken to preserve historic palaces and antiquities here in Egypt as a whole, and in Cairo especially, and of course in this very special palace we are in today?
Measures taken to preserve or to conserve such cultural heritage buildings, historical buildings, are taken to save the archaeological and architectural identity of Egyptian cultural heritage, to save buildings for the coming generation, and to keep the Egyptian identity of cultural heritage. And as culture heritage is not only a main source of income, national income of tourism, but also for the coming generation, and because this is human heritage. It's not only Egyptian heritage, but it belongs to the whole humanity. So therefore we have to preserve and conserve such historical and archaeological building, palaces, houses, and so on.
Sir, can you tell us examples of notable historic places that have been successfully preserved?
For example, recently Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities inaugurated after renovation and preservation the palace of Baron in Heliopolis city. This one of the most successful buildings, as well as I think most of the heritage of El Mu'azz Street, the Fatimid Cairo, and Khediwi Cairo, and Old Cairo as well. Most of these places were renovated and conservated recently by Ministry of Antiquities and Tourism.
Sir, what are the criteria used to determine which historic places should be preserved?
Criteria was taken to decide or to determine which place to preserve. Of course, most of these historical palaces and houses has the same great importance, but sometimes you have to decide where to start with. So some of this criteria is what was the role of this building, the played role of this building through ages in the past and in the recent times. What elements, what's the ethics of this building, like architectural style, artistic style, and these are one of the main aspects which play a great role to decide, to determine which building we have to start or to begin with to save our cultural heritage and archaeological heritage.
Sir, what are the major challenges faced in the preservation of historic palaces and antiquities?
One of the most important challenges that most of these buildings are among the living areas. So many of the people are living surrounding these buildings, and the treatment of some of the citizens are not good to keep or to preserve these buildings. This is one of the main challenges, as well as the high cost of maintaining and conserving such palaces. At the same time, conserving these places is need to a huge number of conservators and substances and materials to be used during the maintenance and conservation of this building. Also, the illiteracy and that the people who live there, some quite are not knowing the values of these buildings, so they treat them not in a good way, which may cause some troubles to these buildings.
Okay, sir, how does the preservation of these palaces contribute to Egypt's cultural identity and tourism industry?
Of course, these buildings, palaces, houses, they contribute in the tourism industry and national income of Egypt, because they are not only heritage, cultural heritage, but at the same time they take a part in cultural life of Egypt, because most of them are used to house some cultural events, activities. For example, festivals of Qal'a Citadel Festival and Festival of Tubul. They usually they take part in such archaeological places. Also the Baron Palace, also they host many activities and cultural and workshops for the citizen and as well as for the visitors of these places.
Okay, sir, are there any educational programs or initiatives aimed at raising awareness about the importance of preserving antiquities?
This is a very good point to focus. Raising of awareness is the most important element. Therefore, Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities are taking a great importance and a great interest to hold some programs for students, kids, children, university students, young generation, to teach them how to save such great archaeological elements and archaeological places. I think to increase or to raise awareness is to let them know the value of such places and how it helps the identity of Egyptian cultural heritage, and how to save these monuments for the coming generation, and how to save these things for the coming tourism to Egypt. I think these training courses and workshops held by Ministry of Tourism and antiquities are helping most of the citizens of keeping and preserving, at least to treat gently with such very important places and heritage, not only Egyptian heritage, but also it belongs to the global human heritage.
Sir, how do the local communities living near these palaces participate in their preservation?
I think the living community, they should be the protecting this area and these palaces and these architecture buildings and historical buildings through the workshops and raising the awareness, because sometimes they ignore how importance of such cultural heritage for Egyptian identity and for the tourism and the income of Egypt. So through teaching these communities and knowing them how importance of these buildings to Egypt and the national income of Egypt, they will be able to understand and to protect themselves. Some of these people not only living in this area, but also they get benefit by selling some souvenirs to visitors or so on. So they have to protect and they should preserve, and they should be the first front line to protect such world and Egyptian cultural heritage, because it returns back to Egypt and income of Egypt, and also for themselves as a living community around the surrounding area of the building and palaces scattered all over Egypt, not only in Cairo but in all most of Egyptian cities and Egyptian provinces. So I think teaching and learning and educating young children, young generation and students and the living people community, this will be the most important element which will keep this building in good manner of condition and preservation, because the Egyptian government pays huge amount of budget to conserve and to preserve these places and palaces. So, but before conserving these places and palaces, we should educate the living community to protect these buildings for tourism and for to keep the cultural heritage of Egypt.
Okay, sir. Educating programs through children. We understand that the children will grow up to know their culture, their heritage, and how to keep and preserve their heritage. As for the community around this palace, how can we increase their awareness to take care of this very special place?
Okay, Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, they have a big department of archaeological awareness. This department performs groups of Egyptologists from each archaeological site and the departments, and they deal with the community living around the archaeological houses and palaces, and they try to explain and teach them how to keep these places and how these places is important not only for Egypt and for tourism, but also for the identity of culture or saving the cultural heritage of Egypt, and and the benefits returning back to them and for Egypt. So through holding some cultural events,
Program.
okay, they know, they start to learn and to know and to be acknowledged and to be a part of the conservation of the cultural heritage of Egypt through raising their awareness about values of keeping and saving cultural heritage of Egypt.
Dr. Mahmoud Halwagy, we thank you very much for this informative interview. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us in today's episode of Nile Cruise from this very special place. We thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Dear viewers, stay tuned. We'll be back again. Another guest here on Nile Cruise. Don't go away.